And we're actually going to start standing today. So this class on Tuesday, we kind of looked at the lower body from the knees down. This is more of a traditional yoga class. It's kind of highlighting these areas. If you had the opportunity to play with that class, you might have a better connection to your feet, but we're going to start with that. So if you do have a block, you're going to take it and place it as high up between your thighs as you can. So place it between your thighs and then walk your feet as close together as the block will allow you to. If you don't have a block, just rest with your feet, probably heels under the sit bones, hands to your hips. We're going to start by looking down at our feet. The mind-body connection to me is that is like actually connecting your brain to what your body is doing. And I feel like with feet, especially, it can help. So just look down at your feet and then lift all of your toes off the floor. And when you lift your toes off the floor, notice what happens to the muscles along your shin bones and the muscles above your knees, so the quads. And the more you pull your toes towards your head, you may feel those kind of light up. It also makes you fully aware of where the tripod or the 4 points of your feet, I know one is 3 and I just said 4 points, but the inner and outer heel or the center of the heel if you're going tripod, and then the big toe mount and the little toe mount. So find those and really press them into the ground as you take your toes back. And you may start to feel some action really going on the front of your shins. That's good. We actually need those muscles and we don't use them a whole lot. So pull the toes back a little bit more and then see if you can keep your 4 little toes up and just bring the big toe down. And this might be hard. And you may notice that your toes start to try to claw. Can you reach them forward and create a little bit more spread between the toes? And you may find one foot does a better job than the other, just as information. Keep pressing your big toe down, your big toe mount down, and then try to spread your little toes more. Keep spreading as you bring them down to the ground. Good. Once they land, relax the toes. Spread the toes as if you're trying to reach them forward. And then lift your head. So keep awareness of the 4 points of your feet. Imagine them with roots in the bottom of your feet, kind of moving down beneath the ground beneath you. Feeling still the muscles above your knees engage slightly, almost as if the thigh muscles are hugging the bones. And start to squeeze the block between your thighs. At the same time that you squeeze the block between your thighs, can you find your outer hips? And as if you're pulling or wrapping the outer hips back, you'll feel your glute muscles, your butt muscles engage a little bit. If your eyes are still open, try closing your eyes and now creating that brain-body connection within your mind. So still feeling the 4 points of the feet, ground down, thighs still firm. Inner thighs rolling back. You can imagine your block, if you have a block, like a Pez dispenser, and as if you're trying to Pez the block backwards. And the outer hips pulling back. And so you should feel as if your lower body is very strong, very stable. Shoulders stack above your hips. Chin drawing in towards your throat. Lengthening the back of your neck. And move your awareness into your breath. So feeling the breath come in and out of your nose. As you inhale, breath moving down to the bottom of your lungs, expanding the sides of your rib cage out. As you exhale, sides of the rib cage softening, spine lengthening. So just taking a couple of moments, kind of move into the softness of your breath that comes from this stable base of the legs, the feet, the hips. And slowly blink your eyes open, bring your hands to your hips. We're gonna go ahead, if you're not already there, if the block is between your thighs, just walk to the back of your mat so that the rest of your mat is out in front of you. So squeeze your block between your thighs, bring your hands to your hip creases, push the hip creases back as the knees bend forward. Draw your navel away from your thighs or from the block and bring the hands to the outsides of your knees. Knees will be about even with your toes. So allow your knees to push forward, push the hip creases back further. Hands to the outsides of the knees, gently push your knees out into your hands, still squeezing your inner thighs with the block with your inner thighs. So as you push the knees out, you'll feel the outer hips engage. Imagine where you're feeling the outer hips activate. Use those muscles to pull the outer hips back, maybe sinking a little deeper. Keep pushing hands into the knees. Keep squeezing thighs under the block. Gaze slightly out in front of you. Shift forward and come up onto your toes. Notice your tendency to grip your toes and try to come more onto the ball mounts. Bring the heels back down. Shift forward up onto the toes. So heels lift, keep pulling outer hips back, squeezing block and inner thighs. Heels down. One more time, shift forward, lift the heels, come onto the ball mounts of the toes. There will be slight gripping of the toes, but limit that. Heels down, straighten the legs. Whoo. Keep squeezing the block, hands to the hips. Firm the front of the thighs and lift up onto your toes. Lower heels down. Squeeze the block, outer hips pull back, lift up onto the toes. Lower the heels down. One more time, squeeze the block, hips pull back, lift up onto the toes, hands to your hips. Keep squeezing the block, roll inner thighs as you bend the knees, coming back into that chair pose with the block between your thighs. Yes, I know it's hard. Do your best. Lower the heels to the ground and fold forward. Knees can be bent or straight. Fingertips to the floor. Lift up halfway so that your spine is parallel to the floor. Start to squeeze the block with your inner thighs as if you're pezzing it back. And maybe move towards straightening your legs. Allow your head to fall between your arms. So your knees don't have to be straight. But the more you squeeze the block and roll it, you may find you can move more towards straightening. And pull the outer hips back. Inhale, fingertips to the floor, lift up halfway. Walk your hands to the front of your mat, coming into a downward facing dog. So spread the hands wide. So fingers reach apart. First fingers are parallel or slightly more open. Squeeze the block, come up onto your toes. Firm the front of your thighs by squeezing and pezzing the block back, and then find the outer hips, pull them back. Knees can be bent or straight. Lower the heels towards the ground. And if the heels touch, can you lift your toes off the ground? The more you squeeze, find more space. Toes come to the ground, shift forward into plank pose. So shoulders above your wrist. Squeeze the block, pez, pull the outer hips. Lower the knees to the floor. Toes can either stay tucked or you can lift the feet off the ground. Shoulders above your wrist, squeeze the block. If not, just roll the inner thighs back. We're gonna do one little push-up. So elbows reach towards your hips, lower down as low as you can comfortably without losing the length of the spine, and then press up. This time we're going all the way down to the floor. Toes point back. Bring the heels of your hands in line with the bottom of the rib cage. Forehead on the floor. Lift the heads of the shoulders away from the floor, taking your shoulders to their elbow height. Press the front of the feet down. Press the thighs down. Squeeze the block. Lift the head, lift the chest, maybe press down in the hands and lift. Belly off the floor, coming into cobra. Lower all the way back down to the floor. We're gonna do that 2 more times. So squeeze the block, roll it. Inhale, press down through the hands, lift head, chest, cobra. Lower down. 1 more time. So find the strength of the legs to support the lower back to lift up. Lift up to hands and knees. Tuck the toes under. Squeeze the block. Outer hips pull back, inner thighs roll back. Press up and back into downward facing dog. Lift away up onto the toes, squeeze the block, roll inner thighs, pull outer hips back, knees bent or straight, lower the heels towards the ground. If the heels touch, lift the toes. Lower the toes, walk the hands towards your feet to the back of the mat, knees bent or straight. Fingertips to the floor, lift spine parallel to the floor. Squeeze block, roll, outer hips pull back. Exhale, fold, release crown of the head towards the floor. Fingertips to the hip creases, elbows towards the sky. Squeeze block, find the strength of the legs to lift all the way up. Squeeze block, inhale, come up onto the toes, arms rise over the head. So a little bit more balance here. Lower the heels down to the ground. Squeeze the block, shift the weight into your right foot. Can you lift the left foot off the ground? So shifting your weight onto your right foot, have to kind of hug that outer right hip in. Lower the left foot to the ground, shift the weight into your right foot or left foot. Hug the outer left hip in. Can you lean, but hug in to lift right foot off the ground? Lower the feet to the ground, both arms over the head. Squeeze the block, roll the inner thighs towards the floor as you sit the hips back. If your hands outside of the knees help to find the outer hips, bring the hands to the knees, press out, pull the outer hips back. Exhale, fold forward, squeeze the block, pez it back as you fold. Inhale, fingertips to the floor, spine parallel to the floor, knees bent or straight. Walk your hands towards the front of your mat, coming into downward facing dog. Lift high up onto the toes, pez the block, pull the outer hips back. Lower heels towards the ground, knees bent or straight. Lift the toes, firm the thighs. Inhale, shift forward to plank, shoulders above your wrist. Roll inner thighs, find the block, roll outer hips. Either knees drop to the floor or keep squeezing the block as you bend the elbows back towards the hips, lowering all the way down to the ground. Toes point back. Press feet down, squeeze the block, roll inner thighs up, outer hips up, lift head, lift chest, press down, cobra, lower. Find the strength of the legs. Use your props or use the cues, lift up and lower. One more time, strong legs, head, chest, hands. Lower the belly, tuck the toes. Squeeze the block, lift the knees off the ground. Either coming up through hands or knees, or use the strength of the legs to press up to plank, and then back to downward facing dog. Lift high up onto the toes. One more time, using the awareness of the block to find the strength of the legs. Knees either bent or straight, lower heels to the ground, lift the toes. Lower the toes, lower the knees. Remove the block, and if you have it, place it at the front of your mat. Shift back onto your heels, toes tucked under. This is not the most comfortable pose in the world, but there's a reason for it. Use your fingers to pull even your pinky toe forward. So taking a little breather. So make sure that you actually breathe when you do this. Now, if this is too much, you can just lean forward and be on your fingertips. And it doesn't matter how far you are. You're just trying to create a stretch in the sole of your foot. And if having hips on your heels is too much, just notice where you can be, that you can maintain your breath, but still get that stretch of the sole of your foot, the plantar fascia. So once you find where you can be for just 3 more breaths, kind of hang out there. And see if you can find a nice, long, smooth breath like we found at the beginning. And this is where we may need the blanket for our knee. So keep your left knee on the ground and bring your right leg forward. So we're going to start where the hips are directly above your left knee. We did this on Tuesday night. I find this pose to be so helpful in so many ways. But your left knee is directly above your left hip is directly above your left knee. Right knee is directly above your ankle. So both knees are bent at 90 degrees. You can either point the toe back or you can tuck it under. If you point it back, look back and notice if your foot sickles in. Can you reach through your big toe and ankle to create like a long line and that back ankle? Take your right thumb into your hip crease and pull your hip crease down. So notice, does that hip pop out? Is the right hip point higher than your left hip? So use the thumb to pull the hip down, kind of rolling the leg bone down and then sucking it into the hip socket. Bring your right hand outside of your right knee and gently push the hand and the knee together. So when you do that, you're going to feel some little action going on in your outer hip. That kind of tells you where your glutes, your outer glute muscles are. So find them and then use them to create a downward rotation and a backward rotation. And if that doesn't make sense, it will at some point. So hand outside of the knee, then look down at your right foot. Again, lift all the toes off the floor. Find the 4 points of your feet, big toe mount, push the big toe down. Little toe mount, bring all the other toes down. Keep that awareness of the toe mounts and then start to isometrically drag your foot towards the back of your mat. You'll notice your right knee or your left knee push forward. Bring your arms over your head, or if you find your hip continues to try to lift up, just use the thumb to continue to roll it down. So you're going to feel a lot of action going on in your hips. So finding this connection between your feet and your hips. Sometimes it's the way that we stand or we walk on our feet that causes a lot of the low back pain and hip pain. So we're using this awareness of the 4 points of the feet to create stability, strength in your hips. Take one more breath, press down through your foot and your knee, draw them towards each other, and then hands to the floor and step back to downward facing dog. So this is going to be one of those lovely down dogs where when people say down dog is a resting pose, you may actually feel it now. And then again, bring your knees to the floor. This time, toes point back. Sit your hips back on your heels. So now we're getting a stretch in the fronts of the ankles. Notice again, are your toes sickling in? Can you reach through your inner arch, your inner ankle, and your inner big toe to find more kind of where the ankle is in alignment rather than that sickling in? We'll just take a couple of more breaths here. If this is too much, you can always sit a block between your feet, or you can kneel on a blanket so that there's not quite the opening in the front of your ankle. And then shift hands to the floor and step your left foot up between your hands. So again, we're in that 90-90 position. Right hip is directly over right knee. Left knee is directly over left ankle. Bring your hands to your hips first. If you bring them on the top of the hips, you may notice one hip pops up. That's a sign that that glute is not on. So use it to level it off. Left thumb in the hip crease helps. So sticking it in the crease, roll the leg bone down and hug the outer hip in. Lift all the toes off the ground. Find where the 4 points of your feet connect. So big toe, little toe, inner, outer heel. See if you can keep your little toes lifted as you bring your big toe down. And then reach through your other toes, stretch them as you bring them down to the ground. Once they land, keep that connection of all 4 points and start to isometrically pull your heel towards the back of your mat. You'll notice your knee starts to push forward. So allow that to happen. It's almost as if you're scissoring your inner thighs together. Notice as when the legs connect, as your outer hips start to lift, can you use hand outside of the knee, press, fighting the outer hips, roll it down. So outer hip rolls down towards the floor and then outer hip pulls back. So we have that rotation down and back. Keep pushing knee forward. Try to resist the urge to grip your toes. Use more of the ball mounts, arms over the head, or if you need, thumb in the hip crease, keep it there. Are you breathing? Because sometimes when we're thinking too much about what we're doing in our bodies, we forget to breathe. And when you switch to breathe, do your legs stop doing what they're supposed to do? And then release, hands to the floor. This time we're going to step to the top of the mat. So tuck the back toes under and step right foot beside left foot. Inhale, come up halfway. Imagine the block between your thighs. Find your inner thigh work. Imagine your outer hips pulling back. Knees straight or bent, let the head hang. Grab your opposite elbow. Firming the front of the thighs. So feeling as if all of the thigh muscles are hugging your leg bone. Inner thighs still rolling back, outer hips pulling back. Head heavy. Fingertips to the floor, inhale, come up halfway. Bend the knees. Fingertips to the hip creases, elbows reach towards the sky, spine parallel to the floor, chin tucked. Press down through the feet to lift all the way up. So outer edges of your feet are parallel. Feet can be up to hip distance apart, or they can be together. The closer they are together, it's a little bit more challenging for balance. Inhale, reach your arms over your head. Find your leg work. Hips reach back, hinge forward from the hip creases, fold forward. Inhale, leg strong, lift head, chest, parallel to the floor. Exhale, fold. Keep your right foot at the top of the mat. Step your left foot back. Drop your knee to the floor. Take your right hand to your right knee, press up. Left outer right hip rolls down, pulls back. Right hand pushes knee forward of the toes. So we're going to do a lot of knees over toes action. So only go as far as you can comfortably. So if it's too much, back up. Press down through your feet, drag your heel back. So you're going to feel the hip engage as the knee drives forward. Press up. Outer hip pulls down, push the knee forward. As the knee pushes forward, drag the heel back. Resist the urge to grip the toes as much as you can. Inhale, shift up. One more time, push the knee forward, outer hip pulls back. Inhale, come up. Hands on either side of your right foot, lift your back knee. Hands to your right knee, press up. So we're coming into a high lunge. Left thumb in the hip crease. Pull the outer hip crease down. So use your hand on your thigh, just as kind of a reminder those things are working. And then lift your right heel off the ground as much as you can. Lower down. Lift the heel. Notice if the toes grip. Try to keep weight on the ball mounts and the toes as relaxed as you can. Heel down. One more time, lift the heel off the ground. Now we're getting a little scary. Knee comes forward of the toes as you lunge forward as far as you can. A lot of strength in the legs. Lift up. That's hard. Heel goes down. Keep wrapping outer hip down. Lift right heel off the ground. Knee comes forward of the toes. So we're using all the muscles to stabilize the knee. Lift up. Arms over your head. Exhale, fold down, hands to the front of your mat. Step. Left foot beside right foot. So you want to block at the front of your mat. So if you don't have one, bring it there. Inhale, halfway lift. Firm the front of the thighs. Imagine the block. Fold forward. Outer hips pull back. Hands to the hip creases. Inhale, lift all the way up. So we're going to give the left or the right hip a break as we test balance on our left leg. So if you have the block, you can challenge your balance by standing your right foot or your left foot on the block. Otherwise, floor is a little less challenging. Hands on your hips. So balancing left foot on the block, lift, right knee forward. Take your left hand to your hip. You're going to actually push your hip out into your hand. So notice this is a little destabilizing. Use your hand to push your hip back in. Push it out. Push it in. So cock your hip out. Use the glutes. Pop it back in. Push down through your foot on the floor or the block. And you can bring your right foot either to your ankle, to your calf, or maybe to your inner thigh. Wherever the foot is, press foot and leg together, hands to your heart, gaze is forward. Option to bring the arms up and test your balance a little bit more. So you can see as we work with the feet, that connection between balance and your feet. The more strong the muscles are in the foot, the more stabilized the ankle becomes, the more stable your balance comes. And then you can also see that connection of the hips. Hands to your heart. Shift, right knee forward and bring it down. Come off the block, shake it out. Second side. So feet either hip distance apart or together, wherever your balance is. You may find it's improving and try to take it a little closer or just stay where you can stay grounded. So legs strong, imagine the block there. Outer hips pulling back, inner thighs rolling back. Inhale, arms over your head. As you exhale, either knees bent or straight, hinge from your hip creases, hands to the floor. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, fold. Keep your left foot at the back of the front of the mat and step your right foot back. Drop the knee to the ground. Either toes tucked or pointing back. Left hand to the knee, rise up. If you use the thumb in your hip crease, maybe that helps to stabilize the leg bone in the hip crease, and then bring left hand back to your knee. Push the knee forward as you drag the heel back. And you may notice one hip goes a little deeper than the other. Lift up. Push the knee forward, straight over your second and third toe. Left heel pulls back. You'll feel the right knee drive forward. Push down through the 4 points of your feet. Rise up. One more time. Push down, drag the heel back as you push the knee forward. Wrap the outer left hip down and back. Come back up. Hands on either side of your left foot. Right toe tucks under, lift the back knee off the floor. So find your inner thigh. So imagine your block between your right inner thigh and roll it up towards this guy. Climb your left hand up to your knee, rise all the way up. Hands to your hips, keep lifting inner right thigh, like the blocks there. Outer right hips drawing down and in. Thumb in the hip crease, lift, left heel off the ground. Lower it down. Keep wrapping outer hip, lift, left heel off the ground. Bring it down. Lift left heel off the ground, and then start to draw outer hip down as you push the knee forward. I know I have a lot of flexibility here, so only go as far as you can. Push the heel down and come back up. Lift the heel off the ground. Push the knee straight forward as far as you can comfortably. Lower as far as you down. Push the heel down, come back up. One more time, lift the heel. Drive the knee forward, outer hip pulls down and back. Lower the heel, hands to the ground. Step, right foot up beside left. Inhale, halfway lift, knees straight or bent, firm the front of the thighs. Outer hips pull back, inner thighs roll back. Exhale, fold. Fingertips to the floor. Inhale, reach up, stand up. And now we'll do the other hip. So we're going to balance on our opposite foot that we just did. So weight into your right or block, right foot either on the block or the floor. Bring your hands to your hips and lift left knee forward. So first, playing with how the hips help. Start to push right hip out to the side. You can use your hand on your butt to push it in. Cock it out. Push it in, firm, thigh firms, outer hip firms. One more time, push it out. Strength of the leg, strength of the foot pushes down, hips in alignment. And then tree pose, either foot at ankle, calf, or upper thigh. So once you find your way into balance, see if you can connect to the 4 points of your foot that's on the block of the floor. Really feeling the weight balance there. Toes are relaxed or not, just notice. Firming inner thigh by pushing foot and leg together. rolling it back, firming outer hip, tailbone drops down, hands either at chest or over your head. Notice if you're breathing. If your balance is super good, you can try closing your eyes. I never do that when people ask that. Like, it's good, but I know as soon as I close my eyes, I'm done. Hands to heart, knee forward, hands off to our feet off, feet to the ground. Come off of the block. Find your strong mountain pose, your strong Tadasana. Do the leg work, do the hip work. Inhale, reach your arms over your head. Exhale, hinge from your hips, fold forward, legs bent or straight. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, fold. This time we're stepping back to plank. Spread your fingers wide, shoulders above your wrist. You can be on hands and knees if plank is too much. Roll your inner thighs, roll your outer hips, reach to the crown of the head, reach tailbone as if you're taking it between your heels. Either lower knees to the ground or lower all the way down. Release the hips to the floor, toes point back. Shift the hands in line with the bottom of the rib cage. Lift, shoulders elbow height. Press your feet down. Feel the strength come all the way up your inner thighs, outer hips. Inhale, lift up cobra. Maybe lifting up, thighs off the ground. Upward facing dog. Either hands and knees or pressing back into downward facing dog. Use that awareness of the legs, the hips, the feet to find the strength and the stability in the lower legs so that your weight in your wrist lessens. And shift the weight into your left foot. Knee can be bent or straight. Reach right leg up and back into three-legged dog. Keep your left leg super strong. So firm the muscles around your leg bones. Start to open your right hip. Bend your knee, kick your heel towards your hip. So super strong left leg. Thigh bones pressing back. Straighten your right leg, square your hips. Come up onto your left toes, gaze between your thumbs. Either coming down to your left knee or taking your right knee towards your nose to step your right foot towards your right thumb. Drop your left heel down and then take a moment to align your right heel to your left heel. Right knee bent above your ankle joint. Reach your arms up and over, coming into warrior two. So Virabhadrasana 2. Lift the toes on both of your feet. Find the 4 points of your feet and press them evenly down. I usually find I have more weight on the inner edge of my front foot, but I want as much on my outer edge too. Then spread your toes, bring them back down to the ground without gripping. Arms out to the side. Look out over your right fingertips. Push your left leg bone back. So the top of the left leg bone back so that your hip's not forced forward. So you can find that nice neutral-ish pelvis. Keep pressing feet down, and then as if you could take your heels towards each other. Straighten your right leg and turn the toes slightly in. Turn the left toes slightly out. Hands to your heart. Bend left knee over left toes. I'm gonna do a side lunge here. Press down through your left foot, straighten. Right toes out, warrior two. Shift back up, right toes in, left toes out, side lunge. So pushing the knee over the toes, outer hips pulling back. One more time, transition back to warrior two. So we got a little footwork as we transition side to side. Straighten, turn right toes in, left toes out. Do that side lunge. Lift the toes, start to hinge, hips back. Maybe bringing hands to the floor. Maybe we stay here. Maybe coming up onto your left toes, lifting the heel off the ground, right toes pull back towards your shin. So we're coming into a low side lunge, Skandasana, if you're wondering. We've got that deep hip hinge in your right hip crease, knees pushing out to the side, so more of an external rotation here. If hands are on the floor, push down, drop the heel to the ground, walk your hands towards the front of your mat. Come onto your left toes, square the hips, left hand plants, right hand reaches coming into a twist. Press your 4 points of your right foot into the floor. Toes relax, start to drag. Right heel back, feel front of left thigh engage. Hands to the ground. Come up onto the fingertips, bringing your hands in front of your right foot. Walk your right foot right behind your right wrist and step your left foot behind your left wrist. Knees start to bend forward. Hands to your heart. So you're coming into kind of a wide foot chair pose. Pull your belly off your thighs. Come onto your right toes. Drop your right heel down. Come onto your left toes. Drop your left heel down. Can you go a little deeper? Right toes. Left toes. Hands to the ground. Come up onto your toes and sit into a squat. In this position, if this is too much on your knees, you can sit on a block. I'm gonna move to where you can see me a little bit better. So you're in this lunge. Take your left hand, bring it to your left knee. Right hand still stay on the floor. Left knee is gonna turn out to the left as you push your right knee forward. Twist back to center. Left hand comes to the floor, right hand to the knee. Use your right hand to push your knee out as you push your left knee forward. Release. Hands to the floor, heels to the ground, forward fold. Grab your opposite elbow and hang. So knees bent or straight, but firm the front of your thighs. Roll inner thighs back, outer hips pull back. Catch your breath. Notice your tendency here. Where does your weight naturally go on the 4 points of your feet? Do you feel more weight in your heels or the ball mounts of your toes? For balance sake, maybe more weight is in the heels. But if your balance is good, can you balance the weight out? Release hands. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, fold. Inhale, reach up, stretch up, arms come over your head. Gaze up. Press down, legs strong, arch back. So finding a slight back bend. Hands to your heart. I'll do the other side. Inhale, reach your arms up and over your head. Exhale, legs strong, hinge from your hips, fold forward. Inhale, halfway lift. Bending knees, hands beside your feet, step back to plank or tabletop. Pause here, find the strength of your legs, the strength of your outer hips to stabilize. And then either knees to the floor or lower all the way down. Either scooping up to upward facing dog or dropping down and coming up to cobra or any variation thereof. Press back, down dog. Find your legs. Shifting weight into your right foot. Lift your left leg up and back into three-legged dog. Firm the front of your right thigh. Pull the outer hip back, so stabilize the leg. And then bend your left knee, kicking your heel towards your right hip. Reach the knee up towards this guy. Keep right leg super strong, especially the outer hip. And then straighten the leg, square the hips. Come up onto your right toes. Gaze between your thumbs, either lowering down to your right knee to bring the left foot up or rounding knee towards nose and stepping left foot up. Drop your right heel down and in. Pause to find that heel to heel alignment. And then using your hand on your knee, round all the way up into Virabhadrasana 2. Lift your toes off the ground. Spread your toes. As you spread, feel that even amount of weight on your feet. Toes to the ground. Right leg bone pushes back, so hips are in neutral. Knee above your ankle joint, arms out to the side, gaze over your left fingertips. So press down. Tailbone reaches towards the ground, spine is long. Notice if your left knee is rotating in. Can you find that outer hip strength? Pull, rolling the outer hip down and pulling it towards your right leg. And straighten left leg. Left toes come in slightly, right toes come out. Hands either to your heart or to your hips. Lunge. So knee is coming forward of your ankle joint, but it's pointing in the same direction as your toes, second and third toes. Sweep back through, find Virabhadrasana 2 again. Hands come to heart, toes switch. Right knee drives forward over second and third toe. Back leg is strong. Come back, Virabhadrasana 2. One more time. Turn your feet and side lunge. Knee is driving, same direction as your second and third toe. Hips are strong. Start to hinge, pressing your hips back as your chest comes parallel to the floor. Hands come to the floor. Pull your outer left hip in. Start to lunge deeper, coming onto your left toes. Heel off the ground. Right toes point up towards this guy. So finding any variation of this. I should never be your like, that's how deep you go thing, because external rotation is my thing. And I can go really deep into it. So just go to where you feel comfortable, where your knee feels comfortable, your hips. Hands to the floor. Start to push down through your hands, your right hip. And walk your hands towards your left foot, coming onto your right toes, right hand on the ground, twist. Hug, outer left hip in. So finding that rotation of the leg bone deep into the hip socket, hip hugging in, drawing back, almost as if you could touch your left sit bone to your inner right thigh. Then both hands to the floor, shoulder width slightly wider than shoulder width apart. Bring your left toes directly behind your left wrist. Step your right foot behind your right wrist. Belly on the thighs, push the hips back. Then bring your hands to your heart. So this time without hands on the floor, or if you need hands on the floor, you can. Bring your lower belly off your thighs. Come onto your right toes. Lower the heel down. Left toes. Lower the heel down. Maybe you stay here. Maybe you go a little deeper. Come onto your right toes. Heel down. Left toes. Heel down. Hands to the floor. Heels off the ground. Coming into, again, a squat. If you want to sit on a block, by all means, the block can be there. Bring your right hand to your right knee. Turn your right knee out as you push your left knee, maybe touching the ground. So right hand is pushing right knee out to the side. If the knee is on the ground, you can lift up. So you got the toe stretch, you got the hip hinging. Both hands to the ground, come back into the squat. Left hand on the knee. Turn the left knee in as the right knee turns forward. Maybe knee comes to the ground if it's there. Hands on your knees, push them out. Both hands to the ground. Malasana, perhaps heels on the ground. Maybe you stay on your toes, but can you balance on your heels? Elbows inside your knees. Press your elbows out as you squeeze your knees in. Tailbone reaches towards the floor. So I'm not going to coach, but if anybody wants to try Bakasana, which is crow pose, we did a lot of work for that, but otherwise just stay, hang out here. And Malasana, with your eyes closed and trying to find kind of a slow, deep breath. So this is a pose that your knees are clearly over your toes. And this is a pose that in many cultures is their seated pose. This is how they sit. And this is a pose that in our society we've lost. And when you watch a baby go from on the floor to trying to learn how to walk, this is a crucial part of that momentum to start to walk. And it can be really difficult for us as we move further away from the floor. But this is one of the most important poses that we can learn to do. It's going to help low back pain. It's going to help hip pain. And we don't do it very often in our society. So hopefully what we've done today gets you a little closer to this. And I'm sure you're all ready to come out of it now. So hands to the floor. Bring your knees to the ground. Toes point back. And then moving either hips towards your heels or block between your heels and sit back and kind of stretching the fronts of your shins. Close your eyes. You may also find that this pose might be a little bit easier. We did a lot for ankle mobility and stability, foot strength, stability, as well as kind of opening the plantar fascia. And shift forward, cross your ankles. Sit your hips behind your heels. Feet out in front. Bring your hands to your knees. Round your back. Let your chin drop towards your chest. And then release your knees and slowly roll down onto your back. Feet about mat distance apart. Lift the hips and shift the hips about an inch to the left. Straighten your right leg to the ground. Bend your left knee towards your right shoulder. Use your right hand to twist the body, the knee towards the right side of your mat. Left hand reaching behind you. Allow your head to fall into a comfortable position. We didn't do a lot for the neck, so maybe it stays in neutral. Maybe it falls towards the right shoulder. Maybe it falls towards the left shoulder. So wherever your neck is comfortable. And only twisting to a degree that you can feel your breath easily move into your deep lungs, your diaphragm, the bottom of your rib cage. Release your left knee. Gently roll back to center, both feet to the ground. Shift your hips about an inch to the right. Straighten your left leg to the ground. Bend your right knee towards your left shoulder. Grab your knee with your left hand and twist right knee towards the left. Reaching right arm behind you. Decide where's your head comfortable. How low can you bring your breath into your lungs? You feel the ribs expand out to the sides as you breathe in. And if it feels constricted, just come a little bit out of the twist. On this final pose, we want to be able to breathe. And go ahead and release your right knee, come back to center, position both of your hips in the center, hug your knees towards your chest, rocking a little side to side. And take a breath in. As you exhale, let everything go, bringing your legs either long to the ground or perhaps the soles of your feet together, knees moving out into Supta Baddha Konasana. But this final resting posture should be a place of rest. So if having your knees in that open position causes any tension or strain in your groins, then legs long is better. But we did a lot to kind of stabilize and strengthen that whole compartment and that hip flexion area. So you may find that this is a suitable position to end in. Once you arrive in your final resting posture, start to bring awareness back to the breath. I wish you could hear all the birds that I hear. It's very relaxing. So imagine a cool breeze, leaves rustling, the gentle call of birds. Our feet and our legs are what connect us to the ground beneath us. They're grounding, they're stabilizing. It's where our balance can be challenged or can be strengthened. When you're ready, reach your arms over your head, reach through your heels or your toes and find inner body length. As you exhale, bend your knees and bringing your feet back to the floor. Moving slowly, roll onto your side body. And just take a moment to kind of move into that state of being grounded, of being centered and balanced. And bringing hands to the ground beneath you. Feel that energetic rebound as you press down to lift up. And from a seated position, bring your hands to touch at heart center, feeling as your hands connect. Yourself meets self. We get that grounded feeling of self connection, especially when we feel the two palms of our hands connect. So, really taking the time to feel that connection. And bowing into the space of your heart. Acknowledge that which lies within. And thank you so much for your time. The divine in me honors the divine in you. Namaste.